Hello, welcome to Tight Lines. Once again, our focus turns to carp fishing, and who would have thought even a generation ago that many carp anglers would see this as a prime time to target big fish, especially in winters as mild as this one's been thus far. Mark Pitchers joins me in the bothy, and despite being based in the northeast of England, still finds carp fishing at this time of year not only possible, but effective. In addition to finding out about some of his methods, over the course of the next hour, we see Mark in action on a recent session at Rookley Fishery on the Isle of Wight. After a very tough start, the weather and the sport finally came good. I'll also be getting out on the bank at Hampshire's Gold Valley Lakes, where I adopted a twin approach on both waggler and pole to target anything that was interested. And I'll have my weekly supply of great advice for all anglers in Fishery Focus, with information on the species you can expect to target and the best tactics to use. Well, it's good to see you again, Mark.
It's great to be back.
Apart from the weather disturbing things, how's sport really been for you?
Oh, I mean, it's been such a mild winter. I've probably had the best start to the year I can remember for I don't know, quite some time.
Really? Yeah.
Been so mild.
So many lakes had a lid on at this time last year.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, I remember like a 3-month ice age, didn't we, more or less?
Yeah, incredible. And you know, you say you've had a good time. I mean, that is a fish you caught last week, was it?
Yeah, that was caught live for a magazine feature. That was one of 3 fish I caught live. And wow. For January, it was an incredible session. And
that's really that's what most carp anglers are called a looker.
Oh yeah,
it's a lovely scaly
an absolute
old fish.
pearl of that one. Yeah,
lovely fish. And is that the sort of fish you like targeting, or are you big is beautiful, or a combination?
As long as they've got character. But yeah, I mean the nice scaly fish, obviously, you can't beat them, can you? But,
I don't think so, yeah.
and if they're big, then it's a bonus, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, that's definitely the case. Big fish always have their own attraction, but as you say, if they've got a bit of character, a few scales out of place, or just little characters, that's the thing. Yeah, definitely. And now, a couple of weeks ago, Mark took a long road trip south to head over to the Isle of Wight. It's not best known as a carp fishing mecca, but the Specimen Lake at Rookley Country Park is one of his favourite winter venues. He obviously hadn't banked on the weather being quite as horrible as it was, though. But like all quality carpers, he was never going to let that get in the way of a good session.
Well, it's been a bit of a grueler so far here at Rookley. The weather's been absolutely brutal, torrential rain, storm force winds, and it's been really tough going. I've been here since Monday, had nothing for 2 days. It's now Wednesday, and out of the blue, first thing this morning, rod rattled off with an upper double, and then shortly after, it rattled off with this. 26 pound 13 ounces, proper chunky little mirror carp, well, big mirror carp. Conditions have greatly improved today, and I think it's looking good for a few more bites, so hopefully we can catch another one live for the camera. Right, let's get him back. He looks big in the water, doesn't he? But there's plenty of fish that size in here and bigger. Well, this is the actual rig that I just caught that 26-pounder on, and as you can see, it's very simple indeed. It's constructed from a coated braid material. If you're coming down the hook, you can see I've got a little quick change pop-up weight there, size 5, short shank beaked point hook, and I'm just using a little white milky toffee pop-up. And like I said at the start, it's very, very simple indeed. And because conditions have been tricky and the fishing has been very, very difficult, I think there can be times when you start to have doubts creep into your mind. Am I using the right rig? Am I using the right bait? And what I do, I just like to go back to basics, go back to proven tactics, proven rigs that I know work, and that way you can concentrate more on your angling. You're not worried, you're not chopping and changing, your rods aren't being wound in. Just go back to basics and stick to trusted tactics that you know work, and they should, in the end, bring you the rewards. Now, because the carp aren't feeding with any great conviction, the theme of the day is very much maximum attraction whilst providing very little actual food content. And for that reason, I've just been using very small, high attract PVA sticks. Now let me show you how I tie them up. We have a handful of small 10mm cell boilies, which I put in one of these munchers. And I blitz them up so that they're basically just dust. And then together with that, I put in just a few of these yellow high impact boilies. Again, grind them up. So they're just very small dust particles. And you can see then the finished mixed is very attractive. You've got all this lovely smell and flavour coming from the baits, and you've got this fleck of yellow to give added visual attraction as well. And all I'll do then is make up into small PVA sticks like that, which is simply just hooked onto a rig for casting out. Now, location is obviously crucial no matter what time of year, but even more so during the colder months. During the winter, the carp can become very, very tightly shoaled, and finding them can be quite problematic. Now, you might be wondering why I've chosen this particular swim. Well, it's one of the deepest areas of the lake, and there's also quite a lot of lumps and bumps, which gives it quite a variation in depth. So if the carp perhaps feel more comfortable at a certain depth, it just allows me to cover more options and hopefully locate the fish. Now, I haven't had any activity here for a couple of hours now, and just seen there, just been for a little walk, just trying to find any sort of signs, any sort of clues that might indicate that the carp have moved, any sort of telltale signs, bubbles or swirls or any activity. Even though you've caught fish, it's always worth looking for a move, just in case the fish have moved on to a new area. Carp tend to be a lot more lethargic during the winter, and because of that it can mean that bites seem a lot more tentative compared to the summer months. It may just be a case of just a few beeps transmitted back to the alarm. So what I've done here to really maximise indication is use these very small light bobbins, and they're fished on a semi-slack line. And also you'll notice I have the line clipped up on this clip here, and what that does, it creates a much more acute angle in the line, and that in turn really does maximise and improve bite indication. Well, out of the blue, this rod's just whizzed into action. I was just watching a few little pinprick bubbles just coming up over the middle rod, and 5 minutes later just one toned off, absolutely screamed off. Feels another sizable fish. Oh, he's shaking his head there. That heart in the mouth moment when you feel the line ping off its dorsal fin. He's coming in close now. He's more or less right under the rod tip now. He's hugging the bottom though, he doesn't want to come up. Oh, done it again. Oh, he's coming up in the water now. Nearly got a glimpse of him. Come on, let me just have a look at you. A really good look at you. It's a common. You can see the white pop up just hanging out of his mouth. There he is. Ready when you are. Nicely done. Another one in the bag. What a result. And here he is. What a cracking looking fish to cap off a very enjoyable and very tough going January session. This one's about £15. This is one of the fish that's actually been born and bred and raised in Ruckley. So it's one of the next generation, one of the babies, this one. But it certainly has been tough going. The first 2 days just looked like a no-hoper, to be honest. I was really fretting, if I'm honest, for this today's filming. So I'm absolutely delighted to bag 3 fish today. It's exceeded all my expectations, and I'm certainly going to be having that long drive home back to Middlesbrough a very happy angler indeed.
That really was great, because you thought everything was for you with the wind and the rain.
Yeah.
You think, oh, that's the time to be out. And it didn't work like that.
Well, on paper, the first 2 days, the conditions were absolutely ideal. It was mild, it was wet and windy, low pressure. It was a perfect angling weather, and it just didn't happen at all. And then the weather changed, the high pressure came in, the wind dropped, and the sun came out, and you think the fish would rise up in the water, but for some reason they switched on. And yeah, it was a surprise.
I remember the weather when you were there, and it was that really deep depression, and maybe it just got too low.
Yeah, yeah.
The pressure just got too low, and they switched off for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it was, we're talking like storm force winds, and the rain was just, I've never fished in rain like it, Keith. It was like someone was jet washing my bivvy with me inside it. It was scary. I think all that influx of water just going in the lake, I think it just switched them off.
And the cold water will go to the bottom.
Exactly, yeah.
We can always, listen, mate, we can think of a million reasons for not catching it.
I've always got excuses.
Exactly. But the genius is when we do catch, and it all came good in the end. That was a lovely common. Rookley's not known for its commons, to be honest, is it?
I tell you what, that fish had me full, Keith. I was convinced I was dealing with a bigger fish.
Yeah.
It was just plodding around like a big one. It must have had its fins out like that, putting the brakes on or something. It had me full all the way to the net. I thought that was a big fish.
Welcome back. My guest today is carp angler Mark Pitchers, and you said after we left you there, you had a couple more fish, and that was one of them.
Yeah, that was 28 pound 2 ounces, if I remember rightly. The second morning, or the last morning I was there, it just looked so good for a bite. I was meant to be on the 9:30 ferry, but I rang and cancelled it, and tried to get on the dinner time ferry. And in the next sort of hour, when I would have normally been on the boat, I had 3 bites in that sort of hour.
Amazing.
I would have been on the boat. I had a 28. A 27-pounder, and I think it was about 18 pound as well, just in the space of an hour. Crazy.
It's funny, you know, when you're switched onto a lake, whether it's on the day, whether I'm fishing a match or whether you're fishing a session, you know when a bite's coming.
It's almost like a sixth sense, and you just know, you just get that feeling it was going to happen, and that's exactly what I did that day.
How do you explain it? It's crazy. Now, you mentioned in that film about the security of doing what you know, and I've got a motto that I've used many times: do what you know, not what you think you know.
Yeah. And
it definitely pays dividends. And you mentioned about the rigs and everything. You've bought a couple of rigs in with you. Let's move these. Look at them. Oh, I do love them. Trust me, I do love a maggot. I do love a maggot. Look at those. Nice Wrigley live maggots in the studio. And you bought those in to show us this rig, and this is one of your...
Yeah,
is this a go-to rig?
Yeah, I mean, these are different to what I was using at Rookley, but in the winter months, for me, maggots, they really do take some baiting. I don't know what it is, and if it's the movement or the fact they're a natural bait. I just think that they trigger some sort of instinctive feeding response from a fish. And in the winter months, it would be, without a doubt, my #1 bait. Reason I didn't use them on Rookley, it is just alive with roach and perch. You could tip a gallon in the edge and it wouldn't even hit the bottom. So it was a non-starter on Rookley. But anywhere else, this would be my go-to rig in the winter.
Now, what you've done here, because I watched you do it, you've actually threaded these on a piece of mono using a sewing needle, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a bit of mono, and then obviously there's a pop-up there to keep them popped up, and just tied to a rig ring. And the rig itself is like a sort of a hinge stiff rig, or a variation of the hinge stiff rig. And it's good for fishing over like choddy and light debris, which you get a lot in the winter, obviously with all the leaves falling, the trees and the weed dying back. It's perfect for presenting a bait over them sort of lake bed conditions.
One good thing about this that I pick up straight away is that should your maggots get mashed by all those silverfish, you're still fishing. You've got a bait, you've got to pop up there, you've still got a bait.
That's right.
But you've now got something the same but different.
This is like the next stage on, if you like. It's like a maggot ball system, it's called. So yeah, I've just got them popped up with a bit of cork. They are buoyant anyway, but the cork makes sure they really do sort of stand up off the lake bed. And although they're not moving, the catch results have been more or less the same as they have with a moving live bait.
Really?
But obviously there's no messing around, threading them on with the sewing needle and tying them on. You're just good to go.
Yeah, they're very soft and easy for the fish to get, very tactile.
Yeah, they're very realistic,
yeah,
that's right. Yeah, when you actually put the lips round them, they do feel just like a normal live maggot. The sensation's almost the same.
You're not the first person that's brought these in, and I've tried them a couple of times, and it is noticeable that if you're specialising, if you want carp, and you've got skimmers and roach and rudd, get one of them on. And even if you put one of those with 2 real maggots, the real maggots get mashed, you're still fishing, and that's the important thing. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, just to see how they work. I've got the special tank here. Let's get that up. There we go. That's why I go to the gym. How likely are these to work as they're supposed to? Let's drop that in and see what happens. There, look at that.
That's sitting pretty, isn't it?
Look at that. Now we drop that one. This is the... Let's get that, move that over slightly so they're not hiding behind each other. Go on, get up there, you. Wow, look at that. That's almost wafting, isn't it, that one? That is, now, you imagine a fish comes along and they either blow into the bottom and take what comes up on as it falls, and it's one way they've got... I mean, fish don't know a hook's a hook, I'm convinced
of that.
No,
they don't, absolutely don't.
But what they know is if something behaves differently.
Yeah.
And if they blow on some bait items, some food items, and they all come up and float down like that, but one goes down like that, that one will be left alone.
I mean, I'm fishing, when I'm spodding out a mixture of live and dead maggots anyway, and especially dead maggots, they are almost sort of semi-buoyant on the bottom. So you imagine they're feeding in a similar sort of fashion, and the way that's critically balanced, as soon as they suck it, it's straight up in the mouth. But
critically balanced is the thing. You're actually countermanding the weight of the hook, aren't you? You're countering the weight of the hook. You're stopping the weight of the hook, holding that bait.
Yeah, it sinks so slowly, and because the hook link I'm using is like a semi-stiff material, because that sinks so slowly, that slight degree of rigidity, if you like, pushes it away from the lead. So as soon as it picks up the hook bait, the lead's there as well, almost instantly to help improve the hooking as well.
You've also got that. You've got a wafter rig.
Yeah, this is kind of similar to what I was using at Ruckley. The only difference is this is a wafter rather than a pop-up.
Just explain to us the difference between I mean, I've mentioned those baits wafting off the bottom.
Well, if you actually see it sinks very, very slowly, but that is actually popped up off the weight of the hook. It's only the weight of the hook that's holding that hook bait down. So it is kind of a pop-up in a way.
Yeah.
But when I'm fishing over clean lake beds, I don't really see the need to use a pop-up, and this would be my kind of go-to approach in like clean lake beds.
I'll just explain chod, because I think it was probably Terry Hearn that invented the word.
Yeah, the term,
I used to call it black bottom, and chod sounds much more attractive than that. It's all those little bits of sticks and twig and decaying leaves that you get after a winter when the spring comes and it starts fermenting all the stuff. It leaves behind a layer of mulch, a gardener would call it. I call it black bottom, Terry calls it chod, and the worst thing I could ever do was when I was fishing the Thames, come in and have a bit of black bottom on me. Oh, you know you're not going to get a bite. But fish feed, didn't it?
I think at this time of year, I think that's where they prefer to be as well. I had a session just last week, and you could see there was birds diving over every little patch of gravel. That's where the anglers were always fishing. They were diving, picking up any bait, and it hadn't been eaten. The fish were out in the centre of the lake, in amongst all the chod and the debris. It's full of natural food items, and it's an easy meal. It's food on hand. I
used to fish a pond on Clapton Common, and it was a boating lake. It was only that deep. We used to catch sticklebacks in it, and you used to go in the leaves and find bloodworm. You weren't allowed to use hooks there. You weren't allowed to fish it, so we tied the bloodworm on and got a stickleback on each end of the bloodworm. Those were the days. Bloodworm are expensive things. Now you've bought in those.
The maggots. I mean, this is how they sort of come as like I don't know what we'd call it, a little disc of maggots, I suppose.
A starfish of maggots.
Star of maggots. Yes, I like that. But obviously you put them together to create that sort of ball that I'm using on the hook bait there. So you sort of stack them together. Come in different colours. You can make all sorts of variations, any combinations you like. But, and they've certainly worked. They've worked very well.
Yeah. The other thing you used there was, do you flavour those anything? Do you put anything with them? Or?
I do keep some soaked in a little pot of sweetener.
Yeah.
But I find it works just as well without it, really. I think it's maybe a confidence thing. But when you're fishing over a large area of like spotted maggot, I don't think it makes any difference. But I was just fishing it as a single hook bait. Yeah. I maybe like that sweetener just a bit as a confidence boost, something for them to home in on.
I'll tell you why I like flavours. Not so much to add to the bait, but to take away from me, because we all smell. We've all got a different degrees of smells. And I've said for years that donkeys, some anglers have bad hands. And they've probably got sweaty hands, and sweat is what animals can smell. Anyway, so flavours work two ways. Not only do they enhance the flavour, but they remove our pong.
Any sort of alien smells to them, as it were.
Exactly, the human smell. I mean, I'd rather have diesel on my bait than the smell of sweat. Definitely, any day. This is interesting. This is tiny. This is your little PVA stick.
Yeah, that's sort of kind of what I was using over at Ruckley. Just enough to sort of bar your bite, really. It just creates a little tiny patch of attraction around the hook bait. And then when it's dissolved on the lake bed, they see this little neat little patch of food, and they suck it in, and it's almost, I think they take the hook bait almost by accident. It just happens to be in this little... exactly. It just happens to be in this little clump of food.
Yeah, I've thought that a lot of times with different baits and different fish. One thing I will say about these, if you use these with boilies or pellets, always do them up fresh. And you'll know this because all these baits have got oils in. And if the oil permeates that PVA, it stops the water getting in. It's water being absorbed into the PVA, but it makes it break down. Now, you know, you can put salt in your bait. If you're using sweet corn or hemp, put salt in it, stops it from dissolving. But if you've got oil on that's why I'm not going to drop it in the tank and sea, because
they've been tied up a few days before, but so it'll certainly slow down the dissolve rate, especially in cold water.
Yeah, and what you don't want really is the fish picking the whole lot up. But when you say you put some bait out, how much bait do you use in winter, and would you always put some spots out if you were using maggots?
With maggots, I do like to fish them over a bed. They're so easily digestible. I think it takes a lot of maggots for them to get full. When I was out last week, I went through 3 gallon, and I wouldn't think twice. I started off with a gallon, and like I say, they just, I mean, they do have a good high food value, but they're straight through them. They're so easy to digest.
Well, they're liquid. Because they don't eat the skins. The skins pass through the fish. And I've seen it with dace, roach, everything. The skins just pass through. And they eat, and you can, like us sometimes, we can drink more than we can eat. Not me, of course, but some people can.
I think it takes a lot to be able to overfeed them with maggots.
I think you're right, yeah. On the Stillwater course fishing scene, match angling on many venues revolves around catching F1, carp, goldfish hybrids at this time of the year. Tricky little devils, so keep everything neat and tidy with your rigs, make sure your floats are dotted right down, and make sure you're using small hooks and light lines, obviously, with suitable elastic on the pole. If you target them or skimmers on the waggler, don't nail your bait to the bottom. Quite often, a few inches, an inch or two off will result in far more positive bites, especially if you're using maggot. The roach fishing seems to have dropped off a bit for some reason. Maybe the carp are still too active. And Mark, you don't know about that on the specimen carp front. There's still obviously carp to be caught. How do you go about it? We've seen your rigs for Ruckley. What else would you be doing?
Well, what I would do is keep a very close eye on the air pressure, because it really does dictate what tactics to use. A lot of people just get fixed with fishing on the bottom, but it's a three-dimensional environment, you know. And when you have periods of high air pressure, you have sort of clear skies and warm sunny days. Also you get cold nights as well.
No, I'll deal with that, thank you, yeah. Keep the cold nights, I'll have the warm sunny days, thank you.
But you do find that the carp do come up in the water column. I don't know if it's because they're trying to take advantage of the sun's rays, both the heat and the light, I think, also plays a big factor. And they do tend to come up very high in the water column, so zigs for them.
You've got a little zig rig tied up here. And like, I think there's another reason as well. One thing that high pressure does, and I've got a barometer at the bottom of my stairs, and I see a barometer every morning. I walk downstairs, give it a tap, see which way it's going, up or down, and it actually makes the air heavier, which presses further down on the water, which impacts on the fish's swim bladder. So the higher in the water, the more comfortable it is. And the intriguing thing, just going on to the zigs, now you've got, this is one of these little zigger liner things here.
That's a zigger liner. It's such an easy way of doing it. It's quite versatile. You can see the foam there. It's just held in place with the band, if you like, that goes down the shank. And you can chop and change. It comes in different colour options, so you could have yellow foam on a blacker liner, and you can create whatever sort of colour variation you want. Some will work better on the days, but for me it's just black. I just use black all year round.
It's amazing as well, because I read a lot about carp fishing, and the number of times that black zigs in the middle of the night with no moon produce a fish. And I suppose there's always sunlight, and if you look up, the more stronger the image, the more stronger the outline will be.
Yeah, I think it's silhouetted massively, more so than any other colour, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, and what you were saying before about the swim bladder pressure, I think you're absolutely right. And as it does get cold, it must press on them. You do see them rolling a lot to try and adjust the pressure in the swim bladder. And if you've got something a couple of foot under the surface, on the way back down, they can't miss it. If they're rolling, then they can't miss a zig. It's right in their eye line.
You say a couple of feet down. Do you have a definitive depth you start at, or do you fish 2 or 3 rods at different?
Well, I always tend to work in thirds, and I'll generally start in the top third and then kind of adjust it accordingly. But I always think the top third is a good starting point.
See, that's something else. By observation, and I used to have one of those little fish finders, and the number of times in very, very deep water, doesn't matter what the species is, even sea fish, 8 feet is seems just a comfortable depth for fish. 8 to 9 feet. See, and if I go to waters that are very deep, first found this out in the Gloucester Canal, which is a very deep canal, and you always caught the roach 8 to 9 foot. So you just put a roach rig on your pole, put a plummet on, stuck your pole out till it got to 8 to 9, and that's where you fished. Didn't look for anything else on the bottom, just look for that. And it so often it was right. And I think 8 foot from the surface is such a good place to start. Yeah,
possibly a comfortable pressure or whatever, water pressure, who knows, but yeah.
Do you use those adjustable zigs, or do you make your hook length the length that you want to fish at?
In very deep water, then, yeah, the adjustable zigs are absolutely superb. But I'm comfortable casting a fixed zig up to sort of 12, 13 foot, even though it's longer than the rod. I'd be more than happy doing that. But the adjustable zigs are excellent in the really deep venues. You can really explore the water column.
Yeah. Now, you've got some targets in the winter. I know this isn't one of your targets because it's one you've already caught.
Yeah, that's from a water I hope to get my ticket from this year, fingers crossed. It's that was actually caught on a guest session whilst we were filming a DVD that's coming out early in the spring. That's 37.5 pounds, but they go nearly 20 pound bigger than that. So that's my target for this year.
When you going, is that a spring target or a summer target?
That starts in the summer, the ticket for that, but I've got another couple of waters to tie me over before that kicks in.
And have they got special fish in, or are they just lovely
fish.
Water?
Big fish, yeah.
How does your approach vary in the summer? Do you go more over to an all-boilie approach then?
I'll be honest, I tend to, in the summer, I do a lot of stalking and what have you. I think that's the best way of catching them. You can have an hour in the right spot is better than 24, 48 hours in the wrong spot. If you can see the fish you're fishing for, it makes it so much easier.
That's something else that, as I said in my multiple readings of carp books, location. If you can find the fish, you see one rolling or swirling, you see another one do it, see bits of feeding activity. It gives you a clue where to start, because, you turn up on a water, anything from 5 acres to 500 acres, knowing there's something there. Even if you don't catch it, must give you some confidence. Yeah,
that's right, yeah. But like I say, if you can see the fish and see the reaction to the rigs and the bait, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Do you ever get to the stage where you watch a fish taking your bait?
Oh, yeah, and eject it occasionally as well. But all part and parcel, isn't it?
And when they do that, do you do what I would do, put my rod on the ground and jump up and down on it, or are you quite philosophical?
No, I think they'll come back. I think that's obviously a spot that they're happy with, a spot that they like visiting. So, replace it and set the trap, and fingers crossed for the next time.
Well, let's hope one of those spots they like visiting is the bottom of your landing net, and with some regularity. And it's in warmer conditions, warmer times, when you're looking more for the low pressure, I suppose, than in the summer.
Yeah, you get the low pressure systems moving in the summer, and that's when they are sort of down on the bottom having a feed. You have hopefully the wet and windy conditions, and those are sort of prime feeding conditions. Normally, that's when you can start to give them a bit of grub.
Yeah. You can have those in the summer. You keep all those warm, wet and windy conditions where you are. Had that lovely hot sun you were talking about. That's it for this week. A reminder, you can find all sorts of information and features from the show on our website. And you can keep in touch with us via Twitter and on email. Please keep sending us your Young Angler of the Month photos on email as well. We're a bit short this month, so you get a good picture in, you've got a good chance. It's been great chatting to you, Mark. Thanks so much for making that long trek down to London. It's been lovely to see you. Thanks very much. Next Friday, I'll be joined by one of the best match anglers in the business. England international Des Shipp will be here to discuss his winter tactics and more besides, I'm sure. We're at 7 o'clock on Sky Sports 4. That's Team England matchman Des Shipp on next week's show, Sky Sports 4 at 7. Don't forget, if you missed that, all the repeats were available on demand every week in the Sky Sports section of Catch Up. Best of luck out there, whatever you're fishing for, and tight lines. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Keith. All that lovely stuff. Thank you.
Watch all 6 Sky Sports channels on your mobile and online.